Hi everybody, it's PJ from DonnyFL. Doing another adapter install today. This time we're going to walk through the process for installing what we call a slide-on adapter. We've got another video out there that goes through how to install a screw-in adapter, the kind of adapter that typically you purchase for a shrouded airgun. This is for a straight barreled airgun with no shroud and no threads. Now the way these connect to the airgun is, first and foremost, you want a very close fit. You don't want there to be a lot of gap in there. That creates wiggle and opportunity for clipping. But then secondarily, there will be some number of set screws. Going to be working on an AirForce Escape 25 cal today. This is the adapter for it, and it has a screw on what I would consider the bottom or the top. You could mount it left and right. We don't recommend that. We recommend one screw up and one screw down. There are other adapters for different airguns. I think of the Bushbuck and maybe some of the larger bore Texans, where there'll be two screws on one side. We also have a variety of slide-on adapters. This one is set up to fit one of the Crossman pistols, and it has two on one side. If I were installing this, I would orient that with those screws at the 6 o'clock position, so they're on the bottom. Well, let's get into the install. The first thing you want to check is the fit to the rifle. So when this ships to you, it should have the set screws installed. You want to make sure those are backed out far enough, and you can take them all the way out. Of course, I would recommend putting them in a magnetic parts tray. I'm outside right now, and if I back these out all the way, I'm certain I'll drop them and they'll fall in the crack between some patio pavers or something like that. So magnetic parts tray is really helpful. But you want to make sure they're backed out far enough so they're not going to catch the metal as you slide this on. And once you've got that situated, you can check the initial fit. Now this one slides on and there is just a tiny bit of gap. I can work with that. If it is loose around the barrel, that's going to be problematic. You shouldn't rattle around a whole bunch. With just a very little bit of gap, I can actually take some blue Loctite, make sure you shake it up, put a little bit on the end of the barrel, wipe it around so you just have a thin coating of it, and then you can install the adapter. And that Loctite will just take up any of that gap. And it will frankly, it'll hold pretty well. We took an adapter off this airgun yesterday, and that Loctite had such a tight bond on it that we actually had to heat it with a torch and then use a vise to pull it out. So I wouldn't use Loctite as my only mechanism of holding it on. Definitely want to use the set screws, but a little bit of Loctite does go a long way. Blue Loctite. Do not use red Loctite. Red Loctite is permanent and you will not get it off. So a little bit of blue is just fine, because you may find you need to take this off or want to take this off at some point to do something else. The other potential is that when you go to slide it on, it won't go all the way in and seat. We want this all the way down so the barrel is flush against the inside of the adapter. And if it won't go on all the way, what that may mean is that on one side or the other, either the manufacturing of the barrel or even the manufacturing of our adapter, the anodizing got just a little bit thick. The thickness of anodizing can be measured. It's not a tool or a device that most people have just lying around. So you're probably not going to be able to do that. You're likely to be stuck trying to fix the problem. If you don't know anything about anodizing, and in all honesty, I really don't know very much, except I know it's a process where the protective coating that is anodizing grows onto the metal that it's protecting. And how long you leave it doing its thing equates to how thick that can be. And all products are made to some sort of specification. The manufacturer who puts, whether it's this Texan or our adapter, into the anodizing tank has a range that it's supposed to be, and they work very hard to try to get it into that range. Sometimes they overshoot the mark, sometimes they undershoot the mark. If your barrel is too big, what we recommend is taking some very fine grit sandpaper. This is a 1500 wet dry sandpaper. You could also use a 3000 grit sandpaper. And whether you work the inside of the adapter or the outside of the barrel is up to you, but you can remove some of that anodizing to get that complete fit. Now this is wet or dry. We do not recommend that you do this wet. When you sand, you tend to kind of open up the pores on the metal just a little bit. And so if you sand it wet, there's a chance of getting some moisture in there, and that could lead to rusting problems down the road. When you're finished with any sanding, we recommend that you actually clean with Ballistol. We use Ballistol for a lot of different things around the shop. It is safe around your O-rings. So anything in the airgun world relies on O-rings to function, and we don't want to do anything that's going to corrode, eat, damage those O-rings at all. So Ballistol will protect the metal. It'll give you a nice clean surface to work with, and if it gets spilled, runs somewhere, somehow gets connected to anything where there's an O-ring, it's not going to cause any problems that way. So we're ready. We've got our adapter. We know that it's properly going to seat on the barrel. We've either removed some coating if we have to, or we've added something like a little bit of blue Loctite if we want to just take up that extra space. And you want to orient the set screws so they're either at 12 or 6, or they're at 6 in the case that they're all on one side. And then what you want to do, now in this case, this adapter uses a 2mm hex key. And I would start with the bottom, but you want to screw that in just until the screw bottoms out. And by that I mean it's touching the surface of the barrel. And then you're going to go to the other side, and while I don't normally advocating look down the barrel, you have to look at it somehow. I know this gun is unloaded. I even dry fired it off camera, so I know it's uncocked and there's nothing in it. So I'm going to look down to make sure those screws are lined up. Okay. And then I'm going to screw in the top side. Again, I'm just going to that point where it bottoms out. Then I'm going to come back to the bottom. What I'm looking for is even torque between those screws. And that's it. This adapter is installed. If I've put some Loctite in there, I'm going to wipe up any extra, and I'm probably going to give that a day to set and firm up before I shoot it. But right now, this air gun, absent pellet and being cocked and all that stuff, but this is ready to shoot. So I could take my moderator, screw it on there, and be all set to go. Now, one other thing, and sometimes people get tripped up by this, okay? Most of these ship with some sort of knurled thread protector. So you do have to take the thread protector off in order to install the moderator. In this case, I've got a 16mm Slide-On. It has 2 screws on the, what I will call the bottom side. So we're going to put those on the barrel. I'm going to make sure that's all the way down and firmly seated. We have pretty much a perfect lockup on this one. I mean, the mating surfaces are right there. It goes on smooth. If you turn it a little bit, it does catch a little bit. That's pretty normal. And that's just surface imperfections on the mating surfaces. So this one's ready to go. I've got it lined up with the bottom of the barrel. And I'm going to do this about the same way I did the one that has screws on opposite sides, except I'm going to just take one until it touches, and then I'm going to screw in the other one until it touches, and then I'm going to slowly apply a little torque to each one. Until it's snug, and that's not going anywhere. We get a lot of questions about whether or not we make adapters for spring-powered rifles. We don't have much success, and we don't really recommend using a slide-on adapter for a spring or gas ram powered rifle. The issue we face with spring and gas ram rifles is that there are 2 recoil impulses that are going in opposite directions. So you have the piston moving forward, and that's one recoil impulse, and then the sudden stop of the piston at the end of the spring stroke, and that's a different recoil impulse going in the opposite direction. And what happens when we try slide-on adapters on those is that you have to tighten them down really tight. And then often that recoil, that double recoil impulse is strong enough that it shears off the set screws. And so it makes a mess out of your barrel, meaning you tighten it really tight to just get it to stay. And then as it shoots, it digs up the barrel, and then the screw shears off, and it causes problems getting the adapter off to try and put a different set of screws on. So we don't recommend it. It's not that it can't be done. It's not that there isn't somebody out there who has done it. We don't recommend it, and don't imply any kind of warranty if you try it. One other somewhat unavoidable side effect of using a slide-on adapter, especially one that anchors with set screws, is that you will find that there is a small amount of marring of your barrel. If you're going to leave the adapter on, permanently, that's not probably so much of a concern for you, but do understand that anytime you take a screw and you use it to come in from 90 degrees and essentially pin another piece of metal in place, you are going to see that point of contact. So you should expect that. And if you are more concerned about the external appearance of the end of your barrel than you are about the noise that your air gun is making when you shoot it, a slide-on adapter might not be for you. And your other option would be to contact a local gunsmith and have them thread your barrel to one of the common airgun threads, typically half UNF for small bore and M18x1 for big bore. The last thing I want to talk about is your options if the size, the outside diameter or OD of your barrel doesn't match up with something that we produce. So let's say, for example, you measure the outside diameter or OD of your barrel and it's 15.5 millimeters. We make a 16 millimeter adapter, which is going to be too big, and we make a 15 millimeter adapter, which is too small. You're not going to take a little 1500 grit piece of sandpaper and remove you know, a 0.5 millimeter from the diameter or circumference of that barrel. It's just not going to happen. What we'd recommend in that case is that you contact us for a custom adapter. You'd want to make very accurate, very precise measures of your barrel's OD using a caliper. Send those to us. So we will take a smaller sized adapter and we will open it up to exactly the adapter size you need for your air gun. I hope this video has been of use to you, and we certainly appreciate your support. So until the next one, shoot safe, shoot straight, and we'll see you around.